Thieves are probably the class that people complain about the most, but the reason why is because they don't really understand how to play against Thieves, because they don't really play them themselves, and because they don't understand that just because a thief can survive or stealth forever doesn't mean that they've lost. In fact, you've won if you just walk away from fighting a thief that's going to perma-stealth because you didn't waste your time dealing with someone who doesn't really want to interact with you. And in the case of PvP, a lot of people overinvest into preventing thieves from decapping them because they don't understand that the thief is actually winning if you're just chasing them around the map. You should really just focus on doing what you can and not doing what you can't, which is being faster than a thief. So usually what you do is you just kill the rest of their team, and then the thief can't do anything without a team. So first of all, let's go over some of the utility skills that you'll see on Thieves. They have the heal skill Withdraw, which has no cast time, so it's going to basically allow them to get out of Immobilize. So Thieves that run this heal are going to want to be more in combat more often because it gives them an evade. There is a little bit of a animation after cast to withdraw, so if you put some sort of like CC at the end of the withdraw animation, they're generally going to be vulnerable there. They also have Hide in Shadows, which is going to give them a lot of stealth uptime, so you want to prevent them from casting this, but they usually will cast that in stealth already, so it's kind of hard to interrupt that. Then you have Shadow Step. Shadow Step is on every single thief build, and for a good reason. It's busted. It's a stun break, 1200 range port, and then for 15 seconds, you can port back to the original location, which will stun break you, and cleanse 3 conditions. So it's 2 stun breaks, 3 Condi cleanse, 2 ports, and it is an instant cast. That's pretty good. However, there are many ways to play around it. You can see the large white circle on the ground after they use Shadow Step to see their return location. If you think they're going to return back to that spot, you can place down traps or necro marks or just precast damage in that area, so if they do return, then they'll basically tank a bunch of damage. Blinding Powder is one of the more common secondary stun breaks that they take. It's just a stun break that gives stability and will blind nearby targets. They can use this with Black Powder to get a lot of stealth. Most Thieves will also take Signet of Agility. This will give them 3 Condi Cleanse, instant cast, and it'll give them half a dodge in PvP and a full dodge in World v World. So if you see this animation or this buff on their bar and you see them use this, that means they've used it, and you basically don't want to, blow too many conditions on them while they have that ready. And if you're counting their dodges, then you know that they have an extra little bit of dodging left. There's also Roll for Initiative, which is another secondary stun break. They usually take this instead of Blinding Powder. It'll give them a lot of initiative, it'll give them an evade and a stun break, and give them condition cleanse. So it is a quite long cooldown, but if you see them basically use a roll and it's not the withdrawal roll, so the difference is the blue light, then they've got a lot of initiative still, so it gives them a lot of sustain. Another utility you want to play around is Shadow Refuge. This will place down a house, and if they go inside it, they will get stealth, but if they go out of it, they will get revealed. So they have to stay inside the house during that whole duration, or they get nothing basically. So what you can do is you can play around this by spamming AoE or knockbacks into the house, and you can either make them leave the refuge because they don't want to take the AoE damage and reveal them, or you can just knock them out of the refuge and reveal them yourselves. If they're using Basilisk Venom, they can share that to nearby allies, and the next attack of everyone who has the buff, as you can see here, will turn them to stone, and that's just basically a stun, which is unblockable. So don't try to be blocking Basilisk Venom, try to dodge it, because if they miss, or if they hit, it will consume the charge, so you do want to dodge that. There's also Dagger Storm, which you basically just don't want to use projectiles into this because it will reflect them and they're evading pretty much the entire time. There is a 4-second animation, but there is a 3-second evade, so the last second of it you can actually hit them. So right before it's about to end, you should throw something at them because they're not actually evading. Playing around Thief is almost synonymous with playing around Steal because their only class mechanic is the Steal. So Steal gives you, when you're playing Core Thief, a 1200 range port to the target. And there are lots of traits like stealing boons, doing damage, healing, and gaining more boons that you can trait to your Steal. And some of those will not succeed if you miss Steal, or if they block Steal, or if they dodge Steal. So a lot of times avoiding Steal is very good, but also Steal is an instant cast ability, so you can't really play around something like that. Or can you? Well, there is one way to play around it, and that's predicting it. So if I play the Daredevil version of the build, or if I'm playing against the Daredevil with Swipe, that's a 600 range Steal that's unblockable. Now the unblockable part is nice, but the 600 range is even nicer to play against, because I know that if they're within 600 range of me, then they can steal to me. Now versus a Core Thief, there's a lot of uncertainty because 1200 range is very large. So you could be stolen onto at any time. But if I'm playing against a Daredevil and I see that they're playing very aggressively, and then once they get into 600 range, I know that basically they're able to steal to me, and I can predict that they might steal as soon as they get into that range. So I either want to stay at the threshold and then slowly keep backing up and staying out of that range, and then as soon as they force getting into that range, I can dodge, and if they're just mashing their steal off cooldown, then I will dodge the steal. So in that way you can kind of predict it. Also, steal cannot be used on targets if they are out of the nav mesh. So what is the nav mesh? Nav mesh is kind of like a developer only design. So only developers see this when they're creating the maps. Whenever they create terrain or like something that you walk on, they put nav mesh on that thing so that you can teleport on it. But when they create objects like this tent right here, there is no nav mesh on it because you're not intended to be walking on it really, but obviously you can still jump on this stuff. So what you can do is you can go into areas where it's clear that there's no nav mesh and a thief cannot steal to you. So basically it will say no valid path. And what no valid path means is that the game does not recognize a valid nav mesh pathing from a valid path to the current path that you're on. So if I press my port here, it sees that there's no valid path because there's no nav mesh there. But if I put it from here, there's nav mesh here and there's nav mesh up there, so I teleport. So you can predict when a thief is going to steal on you if you go in and out of no valid paths. So if I know that a thief's cooldown is coming up and they're not using it on me because I'm in a no valid path, as soon as I get off that no valid path, I know that they're probably going to want to steal to me. So as soon as you get off that no valid path, you can start dodging and using blocks and start using your defensive rotations. Another thing is that you can count the cooldown using similar cooldowns. This is especially good in a thief 1v1 because you can do this with your steal. So if they steal and then you know that it's like a 17 to 20 second cooldown depending on whether they're Deadeye or Core Thief, you know, okay, so if they use steal and I always use, say like if I'm a Guardian, I use Smite Condition every time they steal to me. Smite Condition is what, like a 20-second cooldown? So I know that if I use Smite Condition right after they steal to me, then their steal is going to be off cooldown around the time that my Smite Condition is off cooldown. And if a thief is going to be very spammy with their steal, then you can know exactly when they're going to use it. So that's how the Daredevil and Core steal kind of work. But the Deadeye steal is a little different because it's wider range than all of them, and it's not going to port you to the target, so they can just cast steal on you from a very far range. Now, in some ways that can be an advantage, and some ways that can be a disadvantage, because they don't need to sacrifice their positioning to land steal, so it's very safe, it's not risky. But it does have a cast time, which means that you can sort of predict it, and the fact that Deadeyes have that luxury to use it from range means that they will behave in a certain way. So a Deadeye usually wants to steal to the target almost immediately, because as soon as they steal to the target, they can start gaining malice. And once they start gaining malice, they can start giving themselves more boons or giving themselves more damage on their sneak attacks. So you basically know that a Deadeye is going to steal on you as soon as they can, which is even more spammy than what I just said earlier about thieves who like to steal instantly. So a Deadeye, even if they're playing well, is probably going to steal instantly. So you know as soon as they get into 1500 range, which is pretty far, so it's kind of hard to gauge that, but you know that they're going to instantly steal. You can prevent being stolen to because you can actually line of sight Deadeye's mark. Now if you miss steal, then you won't gain the stolen ability, which gives them more damage and gives them more stealth ability, and a lot of other things that they get from steal traits. The main playstyles of Thief can be categorized by power and conditions, and then power thieves can be categorized by which weapon they choose. Dagger pistol thieves can finish off low targets with Heartseeker, which does more damage the lower health they are. It is a bit of a clunky animation, but if you are that low on health, it can be risky to try to counter pressure them, but because Heartseeker can be so clunky, this is the best time to catch them. They also have Shadow Shot, which is a blinding port. If you see you get blinded from stealth or from afar, you want to immediately dodge because the next attack will usually hit hard. Then they have Headshot, which is a very quick projectile interrupt. You need to line of sight them if you want to land your heal skill or important ability. You can also run through them because you need to be facing the target to headshot it, so you can confuse their pathing for long enough to land it, but they'd already need to be on top of you. Then you have Black Powder. This skill gives them their stealth by combining the smoke field it creates with leap finishers, or Heartseeker. While in this field, you will be blinded periodically, but you still want to play aggressively because if you let them Heartseeker out of it, they will get stealth and be able to escape or backstab you. The field lasts 4 seconds, so you don't want to CC them early unless you see the Heartseeker come out early. If you do interrupt them long enough that they can't get it stealth, they've wasted 6 initiative for the powder and 3 initiative per Heartseeker you interrupt. This is a massive power spike if you can make them waste 9 initiative. If you can't, however, prevent them from going into stealth, you can still AoE spam around their Black Powder, which can prevent them from going for more stealth if it's too risky, or you can run in a circle around the powder. Even if they are in stealth, you can know where they might be. And if they want to keep getting more stealth, they need to keep Heartseekering through the powder to get more value off of it. The reason you run in a circle is to make it harder for them to guess where you will be for them to decide how they will Heartseeker through the powder without hitting you, because that will reveal them. The only way they can not get revealed is if they Heartseeker from the edge outwards, which means they need to stay inside the powder long enough to take a lot of pressure from the AoEs you'll be spamming while circling the powder. Dagger Thieves also have Backstab while they are in stealth. So their one skill becomes a sneak attack, and if you're playing more defensively than aggressively, because maybe you're low or you're outnumbered, you're going to want to hide your back when they're in stealth. Either backpedal in the direction away from where you think they are, or put your back to a wall or ledge so that they literally can't get behind you. Sword Thieves mostly gain their pressure and sustain from the use of Infiltrator Strike. This ports them to the target at 900 range and will immobilize you. They can then return to their original location by using the skill within 15 seconds. Especially if you have a ranged weapon, you want to camp their sword return spot, which you can see as a subtle white circle on the ground. This means they will get less value from using the port and might even not get any value from it. So you're basically making it so that they can't outrange you and they're forced to engage you. They also cannot port to you or back to their original location while standing on a no valid path, just like steel. But that's not the only reason why you want to use terrain against them. Their flanking strike skill also does not handle terrain very well. This is an evade that moves you slightly to the right when using it, even with a target. If it lands, it becomes Larcenous Strike, which is just a basic stab but will steal boons and do lots of damage. Both parts of the skill are unblockable. Most ST Thieves will spam this skill because it does damage and gives them evades and sustain. But because it moves them around so much, they can't make precise movements on terrain and will fall off. They'll be forced to swap to shortbow or spam their dagger 4 if you use terrain, which gives ranged classes a huge advantage. If they do chase you on terrain, they can really only use their auto attack and cloak and dagger, which is pretty strong and will give them stealth, but it's easy to see and slow, so you can counter pressure or disrupt them. Sword Dagger is generally the better spec for less skilled players because it's really good for open field without terrain, and you can just press Sword 2, and even if you're blindfolded, you can just spam a rotation of evades and Sword 2 and steal without needing to position yourself, as long as you have the enemy targeted. And against better opponents, they'll be able to play around it because they'll see it coming, whereas Dagger Pistol Thieves can still chase targets on terrain without falling off or having their skills become useless, and they have more stealth. If you don't have terrain nearby, you can still counter Flanking Strike by just understanding some simple geometry. Flanking Strike moves you slightly to the right. If you're facing each other, that means the thief will be moving towards your left, which means if you move towards your right, you'll be able to avoid their Flanking Strike without even dodging. Now, you will want to be kiting by moving forwards because you move faster that way. So if you're running away from an SD thief and they're behind you, hold forwards and strafe left to run slightly to your left. Deadeyes have a lot of spammy ranged attacks, but you shouldn't panic when you see one is on you and waste your dodges. Use line of sight to force them to come closer to you, and then jump on them when they try to reposition. The attack you want to avoid most is Death's Judgment, which will deal more damage the more malice you have on you. If you have the mark on you in the first place, it's a good indicator that they're going to focus you. But if it's at maximum, they will most likely go for their Death's Judgment, which is a sneak attack, meaning they need to be in stealth to do it. But unlike most other sneak attacks, this will reveal you before it hits. So you can see it coming before it lands, and there's a red dot, light, they show beforehand. You want to dodge when you see this, and there's also a very strong skill called Binding Shadow, which shows a misty animation between them and their target, and then it will knock them down and immobilize and rip boons. It's brutal if it lands, so always dodge when you see this. However, they can cast this from stealth, making the animation not show up, which to be honest I've asked for it to be changed for a while, but if you know they are running this utility, you just need to save one big cooldown for just that, like a stun break combined with a block or a stun break roll that will remove immobilize and then you can dodge again. Then there's the Condition Thief playstyle. Usually they'll be using the Pistol Dagger weapon set. and they'll be using some form of steel that gives condition damage. Mainly their damage is going to come from stealing to the target. This will give poison and confusion. You want to remove the poison stacks after the confusion runs out, because the poison duration is much longer than the confusion, and the confusion only lasts for 3 seconds. So what you want to do is when they steal to you, you want to just sit there and wait for 3 seconds, because if you attack and panic and start blowing condition cleanses, you're not only going to take more damage because you're trying to cleanse with confusion on you, but you're also cleansing conditions that are going to come off in 3 seconds anyways. So you want to wait until the confusion is gone, all the cover condies, because the weakness only lasts for 3 seconds as well because of the Lotus Poison trait. And once those cover condies are gone, they'll generally have like bleeding, poison, and stuff like that on you, torment, and then you can cleanse those damaging conditions. They'll also deal damage from the Shadow Strike, so they can combine that with the Steel, and once they land Shadow Strike, it'll port them away, and then they can spam Repeater. Most of their damage outside of their Steel come from projectiles, so if you have projectile blocks or line of sight, that'll be very good, because then they can't do a lot of their additional damage to follow up with their burst. Their burst is still going to be there, but if you know how to play around their burst and then you line of sight and kite and cleanse yourself after the cover conditions are gone, you can actually survive a Condition Thief build very easily, and that is also why Condition Thief is one of the easier ones to play, because it's only really good versus players who don't know how to handle it. So how you want to play around the Shadow Strike, which is one of their main damaging abilities, is when they get in melee range of you, now obviously they can Steel burst into it, but otherwise they're going to have a 25-second steal, so they're going to be using Shadow Strike more often than they're going to be stealing. So Shadow Strike is an instant cast, almost. It has a cast time, but it's basically instant. So if they get in range of you to use Shadow Strike, they're going to land it. So usually what you want to do is have an Aegis or a Blind so that they can't do that. Or you just stay out of melee range, because Condi Thieves have very little mobility. So if you're moving out of range of them, they're going to be constantly trying to move towards you. And if they can't move faster than you, then they're not going to get in range unless they have Steel. And if you can just outrange their Shadow Strike, then you'll be fine. And especially because they're pretty much sitting ducks when they're in Pistol Dagger if they can't land their Shadow Strike. So if you can somehow keep a distance from you and the target, that will allow you to avoid Shadow Strikes but allow you to deal damage to them, you can basically destroy a Condition Thief, because a lot of their sustain comes from stealth and just leaving fights after they've blown their whole load. Mesmers are hard countered by Thieves, because Mesmers rely on being faster than their opponents and being slippery to survive. However, Thieves are just better at doing that, so they just catch up and they have more stealth, and their stolen ability from Mesmers give them a lot of powerful boons. Mesmers do have more damage though, so if a Thief isn't patient, they can be killed. Revenants are also countered by Thieves because Thieves disrupt the flow of their energy channeling rotations by disengaging after they legend swap so they can't make the most of their power spikes, and locking them down because of their lack of stability and stun breaks. The stolen ability also hits very hard. Engineers and any kind of class that has a lot of range damage can counter Thieves because they do so many AoEs that can catch Thieves while they're in stealth, and they usually have ranged attacks to pressure Thieves even though the Thief can move faster than them. And even if the Thief decides to go head to head with the Engineer, they'll lose because the Engineer is just a tankier duelist. The Engineer's stolen ability does almost nothing to help this. Rangers counter Thieves for similar reasons. They're tankier and they have a lot of range damage to pressure the Thieves even if they kite. And the pets can often pressure the Thief even if the Ranger is in danger of dying, giving the Thief very little time to get the kill and forcing them into risky decisions. The Stolen ability gives them a great advantage against Condition Rangers, but the extra sustain doesn't do much to help them win because if the fight lasts longer, the Ranger is in a favorable situation. Guardians also counter Thieves because of the AoEs they have, but also the sustain they give to their teams, creating tough decisions for who to focus, and they'll bully Thieves out of larger fights. The Stolen ability, however, can be very useful to daze Guardians for a long time if the Thief times it right. Warriors can survive Thieves with their tankiness and threaten them with CC damage combos, but a Thief can be very hard to hit if they time their evades and blinds well. The Warrior's Stolen ability combined with a smoke field is really hard to deal with, but generally Warriors make it hard for Thieves to do their job because they are so tanky. Thieves can bully Necros in small scale fights and interrupt their slow animations and heals. The Stolen ability is also a very strong fear. However, Necromancers become much more survivable in larger fights and can bully Thieves with AoE and ranged pressure in the right situation. Never over-invest into a Thief kill unless you know for sure that they don't have cooldowns. You'll never be able to catch up to a Thief if they want to disengage. That is the strength of Thief. They choose which fights they get to take. However, if they do enter into your fight, you should pressure them, and because they're squishy, they'll have to disengage very early. And then as soon as they disengage, don't chase, but swap back to their team and pressure their team. This will make it so that the Thief can't free cast, but also so that you don't waste time chasing them around. And if the Thief plays overly selfish and cares too much about their own life, then you can take away the rest of their possessions, like their teammates and their objectives. A good Thief will usually use their cooldowns selflessly to help their team or to play overly aggressive to get kills. These Thieves play a little bit more risky and can be punished, so if you see that they've used a lot of their cooldowns aggressively, you can go for a CC and a kill on them. Shortbow is another thing you have to learn to play around against a Thief. A very good Thief will know how to use Shortbow, and if you are chasing a Thief who is kiting you, they can put cluster bombs behind them, and you have to be very careful with that because cluster bombs can really hurt. They also have the choking gas, which when they use it on downstate bodies, they will daze, and it makes it very hard to res. But that is very costly, so if you dodge the choking gas before it hits, and then you're no longer dazed, they will be struggling to prevent you from that res. And then the Infiltrator's Arrow is a very high cost but very high mobility movement skill, and you know that they have the ability to disengage with this, but if they use it to disengage, it means that they're going to starve themselves of initiative. So if you can catch up to them after they've used their Shortbow a couple times, then you know that they're going to be very weak. But if they get out of range of you, then you shouldn't chase. And finally, I want to address the common misconception that Thieves are bad at 1v1ing. While it is true that you probably shouldn't 1v1 as a Thief because you build towards securing kills for your team and being as aggressive as possible, you generally are going to have a disadvantage against 1v1ers who actually build to 1v1. Now you can obviously build to 1v1 as a Thief and you can be good at 1v1ing versus a lot of the 1v1ing classes, but that's generally done better by the actual 1v1 classes. As a normal kind of like rotational Thief, you absolutely can 1v1 someone, and that's because Thieves are meant for small scale fights and focusing single targets. But that doesn't mean it's not risky or not valuable, because you're not going to be able to hold the node anyways. So really, Thieves are actually pretty decent at 1v1ing, especially in open fields like World vs. World, because they get to choose to fight on their own terms, basically. And there's not that much terrain in a lot of cases, so terrain is probably one of the harder counters to Thieves, and just the ability to be tanky and survive and to just bully them out and, you know, do more damage while also being tankier than them. So anyways, if you like this video, like it and subscribe for more, and check out the playlist for the other matchups. And I'm also going to leave you guys a little link to the Thief is Fine video to remind you of the mindset of most Thief players. So yeah, check that out.